everyone, and welcome to another episode of the ROKER RAPPORT podcast in association with the Sunderland Community Soup Kitchen. It's Gav, back once again after another weekend of exciting, exhilarating, scintillating championship football as Sunderland come away from the behemoth of Luton Town with a point in tow. And joining me today is Chris Wynn. Hey, mate.
Good evening, Gavin. Making a habit of this.
Yeah, it's just me and you this week, isn't it? What's going on? People are going to start talking about us, just me and you together. So, Sunderland's trip to Luton, we'll get right into it there, because we'll probably talk a little bit about the Huddersfield game. But so we made the big old trip down to Luton to take on Nathan Jones' side at Kenilworth Road. This is a game which everybody told us would be difficult because Kenilworth Road is a hard place to go. Some of the crack around it reminds us a little bit of when we used to go to Pompey. People talk about Fratton Park, about how the pitch is close to the stands and the fans are on top of you, and the atmosphere can be quite raucous, even though it's a little stadium. Everything's compact and it does make it difficult for the players. And their form's been good. They're in decent form. People are starting to talk about them again as a potential playoff contender after a bit of a naff start, really. So all things considered, a point probably isn't a bad result, is it? Especially considering we went 1-0 down.
No, I think it's a really good point. And, your summary of Luton Town there, if anyone wants to read if only they read the intro to Matchday Musings that I put up after the game. I try to kind of sum up what a trip to Luton is like. It's pretty, miserable affair.
I've been and it wasn't great. I think I parked, this was the game when we won the championship under Keane. We parked in Morrison's about a mile away from the ground, and it's just mad. You have to walk through loads of back lanes, and I think the away end's actually sort of in the middle of a couple of houses. So people's houses at either side. It's a sight. I mean, can you imagine if they got promoted? I mean, they were in the playoffs last year. Imagine like that being a Premier League stadium. They probably would have done really well, because you would have had like the big shots going to Luton and thinking, what the hell is this? And they would have used it to their advantage.
Wait, they'd need to spend a fortune if they got promoted. They're doing everything out, because it's a mess.
Yeah.
It's an absolute mess. But when you said those backyards, I mean, you get in, you walk up them steps, don't you? Like almost looking down at people's back gardens and trampolines and all that sort of stuff.
I think I saw a photo of someone who they were walking into the away end and someone had washing on their line just as they're going into the away end.
But it's one of those places, though, like you said, it's tight. It just makes you feel uncomfortable, because it's just got that feel about it that everything's on top of you and all this sort of stuff. And you just want to get in, get something out of it and get out as quickly as possible, really. But it had that kind of feel about it. And actually, the start of the game, I mean, God, the first 10 minutes, even from afar, I felt like the players feel uncomfortable, because they were on top of us first 10 minutes. I mean, after 10 minutes of the game, I thought, if we get anything out of this, we'll have done well. So, I mean, just to get that point at the end of it, and I mean, we'll get into kind of all the details, but just to get a point out of that game, especially with how it started, I mean, I was chuffed at the end. And
again, didn't have a recognised striker on the pitch for most of it. I know Ellis Sims did come on, but we had to find a different way to play. We might as well talk about the team selection to start with, because that did raise a few eyebrows, didn't it? when we saw that Bailey Wright was starting. Even though, to be fair, on the Friday Night Live show we did on Twitter, quite a lot of us were in agreement that we should probably start Bailey Wright, because we just thought, especially with so many defenders missing and the fact that we're being taken advantage of on set pieces and corners and stuff, that maybe bringing him in would just give us a little bit more protection. And I think for the majority of the game, Bailey Wright did offer us that. He gave us a little bit more. It was interesting as well listening to the stream, because obviously I wasn't there either, but because the cameras are so close to the pitch, Bailey Wright, you could just hear him barking orders at everybody all the way through the game. So, he brings something that we maybe don't have in other areas of the pitch. So he came in. I think Leon Diaku starting again raised more than a few eyebrows, because to be honest, he's been nowhere near the team at all, and then all of a sudden he's starting. But this is Mowbray's way, isn't it? He does have this thing in him where he'll just like pinpoint a player and think, today if I throw him in, he might show us shows how hungry he is and how much he wants to be here. And I presume that was the call he made with Diaku, because on the bench he had Embleton, who had been starting games recently, Patrick Roberts, so the players on there who could maybe have made an impact for us from out wide. I know Roberts probably was deemed not fit enough, which is why he didn't start, but Jewison Benetti didn't get into the squad at all. Abdullah Barr wasn't in the squad, so quite a lot of players who could have played and didn't play, and he went with Leon Diaku. And when I saw the team, I thought he might start up front, but he didn't. He played out wide. So there was a couple of little things there, wasn't there, that we can maybe take note of. How do you think they played, and what did you make of the decision to start those two players in particular?
Well, I think that the whole Bailey Wright one was about Luton Town. I mean, if I don't really want to mention him, but if we go back to Alex Neil, a lot of our praise for Alex Neil was around kind of having a plan for various kind of opposition, different styles of opposition. Yeah. And so far, Tony Mowbray has been pretty consistent with kind of what 11 he's shaped up with, and he hasn't done too much rotation in the starting 11. He's kind of made changes during the game, especially kind of late in the second half. But I think he looked at Luton Town, looked at the style of how they're going to play, and he thought, well, they're going to play with two big physical front men. So, and Luke O'Nine's been doing well there, but I think Luke O'Nine is more suited to those games, where we've got more possession at the back, and he's going to get
definitely,
and he's going to get a lot of the ball, and we need that kind of player who can play us out of defence quickly and play that right ball, wide, whether it's a fullback or whether it's into midfield or whatever. And I think he thought, well, Luton Town away, it's not going to be that type of game. It's going to be physical. There's going to be high balls coming in. It's going to be balls into the box. And if you're going to do that, Bailey Wright is kind of the man you need for that sort of battle, isn't it? And then push O'Nine out to full back, and then kind of Hume, went onto the bench after starting it the last game. But yeah, I mean, I think that's what that thinking was all about. The Diaku one, I mean, that must be surely just Mowbray. Mowbray sees them day in, day out. Diaku must have done something right and said, and kind of done the business on the training ground, and Mowbray's been wanting to throw him in, or he's been knocking on the door saying, look, we're not scoring goals. Give us a chance, and I'll try and get one. It was also interesting starting off because I was before the kickoff, I was writing down, trying to do different variations of who was going to play where, because obviously it's not obvious without a recognised striker. And I actually wrote down that we, with Diaku up front, and I had Ahmad on the right, and it seemed to start off that way. And then I think after that kind of 5-10 minute period, or during that kind of early period where we were kind of under the cosh a bit, I think Mowbray swapped them two. And Diaku came onto the flank, and Ahmad went up front, because I just think we weren't getting a sniff, and Diaku wasn't able to hold it up, and kind of and actually we got a bit of joy from it, because we had a couple of breaks, and that's how we ended up getting out after being pinned in for kind of the first 10 minutes. I think we had a break, and actually Ahmad and Diaku kind of combined, and I think it was just a bad touch from Diaku, and he could have been in the end. But it was
a great ball, that, by the way. It was a really good ball. I just weren't on the same wavelength, I don't think.
No, it was a good run, but like I said, it needed that change, and in the end we started to play it a bit longer, because we realised Luton Town was so on top of us, but it needed something to give after those first 10 minutes, because like I said, I feared for the worst after that opening period.
It was poor, wasn't it? We just started as badly as we ended the last game. I mean, Dan Neil kept putting them in on goal. I think 3 minutes into the game, he made the same mistake that he made for Burnley's fourth. He passed it straight to one of their players, and we were really lucky not to concede from it. But it wasn't the only incident in that 10 minutes, because there were so many of them.
Well, Diaku should have been ahead before that. Diaku, a couple of minutes before that, did exactly the same.
Luton should have been ahead. They should have scored after they hit the post. Came close a couple of times. We had to clear quite a few. There was blocks in the box, which is where Bailey Wright came in handy. It wasn't good, and I think there was a little break around about the 8th or 9th minute where Mowbray got a couple of them in for a word, and that's when we started to turn a little bit. Because I remember saying to the lads, I was like, "This has been probably the worst 10 minutes of football I've seen all season. Like, in terms of the first 10 minutes of a game, it's as bad as we'd played." But then after that, to be fair to us, we did take a little bit of control, and I think you've got to give us a little bit of credit for doing that. But also, I don't actually think Luton were particularly good, if I'm honest. I think it was one of those games where the teams went back and forth because where we were a little bit weak, so were they. So it was when we were going forward, we were getting in behind, and when they were getting forward, they were finding it quite easy. I'm actually surprised it only finished ones each, because had either team taken a couple of more chances, it could have opened the game right up. But I thought that in terms of a spectacle of football, while the actual football wasn't scintillating, it wasn't like watching Man City versus Real Madrid, but both teams were finding it quite easy to create chances, which obviously we've seen that with us. We know Sunderland are that type of team. We know where our weaknesses are, but I wasn't expecting that from Luton, if I'm honest. I was expecting them to be a little bit harder to break down.
The way the game went, I think that's what Luton are. I put in the kind of summary of the game that it was one of the scrappiest games we've had this season. That, it was, but you couldn't take your eyes off it because it was scrappy. Like, both teams couldn't put a running passes together. I mean, even the chances we were getting, it was because we'd played it long first and then kind of got a foot on it, created something.
Well, that Diaco one where he hit the post. How did he get on the end of that?
Yeah.
The Luton defender just totally misjudges the flight of the ball and he's in behind.
Exactly.
It happened a few times.
I mean, we didn't put it on the deck, like we normally do, pass it around the back, then into midfield and then back for a bit and have a period of possession. We didn't do any of that. We hit it longer, and I think it was purely because of the way Luton played. Because Luton are they play this kind of scrappy way where it's kind of anybody's game. And they force their opponents to kind of play the way they do, and they make the game, especially at home, they just make it scrappy. And like I said, we kind of rode it out. I mean, all right, I think we rode our luck a little bit, in that first, 10, 15 minutes. But once we'd rode that out and then got ourselves back into the game, it became, like you said, it became that kind of almost game of basketball where it was like us playing a long ball forward, getting a chance, then playing a long ball forward, getting a chance. And it was just it was going like that. Nobody wanted to kind of put a foot on the ball and just calm the game down. But I just think that's the way Luton are. And Luton are successful playing that way and get points from it and get wins from it. And I think coming out of that opening period and doing what we did, because we last week we questioned the mentality of these players, or how strong they were mentally after what happened against Burnley. And you asked in the last pod, you said, how do we bounce back from that? And I actually think that we proved a point by coming out of that early period against Luton after we struggled and getting back into the game, that actually we'd learned from that Burnley game.
Yeah. Well, it was probably a more settled performance in the sense that I think once we learned after that 10 minutes, look, this could be a goal fest if we don't tighten up. Yeah. The lads did, to be fair, like I pointed out Dan Neil being slack, but I actually thought as the game grew, he got a little bit better. Thought he did okay. There was a couple of times where he won some really good tackles down in the right back spot that set us off on the, and he's good at that. I guess with Neil, maybe we don't say this enough about him because he's a little bit different to some of the other lads we've got who are young. But he is young. He's still got lots of mistakes in him. He's still got learning. This is his first season in the Championship. The manager's put a lot of faith in him because he's playing every single game, whether he's bad or not. He plays every week. They've obviously looked at him and went, he has to play every week when he's fit if we're going to get the best from him down the line, because taking him in and out of the team's not going to help him. So Dan Neil stays in pretty much whenever he's fit, doesn't he? And we've seen sort of like what I would say, that embodiment of Dan Neil's game where he is a little bit inconsistent. We saw that in the first half against Luton because he was, like I say, could have quite easily made a mistake which put us a goal down very early, but then grew into it and was quite effective and worked really well with Ahmad. And that's another player we should probably come on to in a bit, but we'll quickly fly through the first half. So like I say, it was back and forth. We had chances, they had chances. There was that Diaco one which stands out, which I thought he was really unlucky actually. I haven't watched the replay back. He doesn't look up when he hits the ball, so I'm not really sure he knows where it's going. Instinctively, he might know it's going to the post that it hits towards that corner. But Danny Collins on the stream, he thought that maybe that Leon Diaco should have opened his body up and shot across the keeper. I just think sometimes, especially with young players, they go on instinct, don't they? They just smack the ball. It's sort of the more experienced lads who are a bit calmer under pressure, and in them situations, they already know what they're going to do 3 seconds before they hit the ball. Yeah, he's just trying to score, trying to give us something, trying to impress. So you saw it when he hit the post. He sort of head in his hands. He was devastated, but really unlucky, wasn't he? And I mean, that's probably the only big chance he had in the game. But fair play to him for taking it on, because he could have done Danny Collins, maybe said, and opened his body up and went to the other side, and the keeper could have just caught it, because he would have had to use the inside of his foot. Instead, he's used his laces, he's put his foot through it, it's hit the post. It's a bit unlucky, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think, I think by his reaction, I think that shows you how desperate he is for a goal, because I think all the players now know that when they get a chance, and it was almost a lot of us were thinking it was a bit out the blue for Diaco to come in, so he probably thought, well, I've got this chance. If I get a goal, then I've got more of a chance of playing more often, because he is kind of he has been on the fringes. But that chance, it was only half a chance, really. You wouldn't actually say, oh, it was a really good chance, because I think he still had that defender around, and he was still and he was on his wrong foot.
Oh, he done brilliantly, didn't he? He done brilliantly to even work the shot. When you look at it, he sort of jinks a little bit, sends the defender the wrong way to open up the space, that's it, and goes the other side of the goalkeeper, which probably wasn't what they were expecting.
Yeah, but what you said though, instead, okay, yes, naturally you'd want people to try and go for that far corner, because it kind of just makes sense. But actually, on his wrong foot, he's probably got more control over it if he's swinging it like that than trying to kind of be accurate because to get power on it with your wrong foot to curl it into the far corner, I don't think, like you said, I think it probably would have just been a tame effort that went straight to the keeper. But swinging his foot for that near post, he probably got a bit more power on it. And actually, when I saw the original, in full speed, and then when you saw it in slow motion, I'm not sure the keeper would have gotten there, actually.
No. What do you make of the goal then? Because I listened to Tony Mowbray talk about it. The timing was awful, by the way. 2nd minute of injury time, first half. That's just the worst time to possibly concede, is in injury time at the end of the first half. But after the game, Tony Mowbray just wasn't happy at all. I mean, he often just skirts around any issues with officials, because he's wise enough to know that if he opens his mouth too much, he could end up getting a big fine, a touchline ban, and all the rest of it. So, he was probably a lot harsher about the officials behind the scenes. But in his conversation with the club media, he actually made a point to point it out this time. He was like, once again, I feel as though the officials have had a bad day. It was something like that. Or had an off day, or had a tough day. He didn't turn around and say, I thought the ref was shite or whatever. But he, of course, the incident he was referring to was the first goal. We've watched it back a couple of times just before we came on, and it was interesting, wasn't it? There was a couple of things that we noticed, having watched it a good few times. First off is the foul to Danny Bart, or I don't know whether you think it was a foul or not. But Danny Bart goes down. Sort of Carlton Morris makes a beeline for him. Does, to be fair, kick him or knee him. I can't really tell properly what he does, but Danny Bart doesn't know he's there, and he gets something in the back of the leg. It's enough for him to notice and go down. It's not, you wouldn't accuse Danny Bart of being soft, would you? So I think whatever he's done's been enough to send him down. While he's on the floor, the ball's still out on the wing, where the game's still going on. Dennis Serkin's 1v1 with, you said it was Alfie Doughty, didn't you? I think it is. Their wing back. Serkin, like last week against Burnley, shows the man, instead of going to it, this time he shows him down the line onto his right foot, which I found strange, because Doughty's right-footed. So you're showing him onto his decent foot. He goes down the outside, he crosses the ball in. All the while, Bart's on the floor. Bailey Wright's then left with two men, doesn't really know what to do. Turns round to sort of appeal to the referee, who isn't even looking at what's going on with Danny Bart. He's watching the ball. And in that sort of half a second, Carlton Morris is unmarked at the front post and does really well, to be fair, to flick it towards goal. Patterson spreads himself, but it isn't enough because it goes through his legs and under him, and it's a goal. I mean, there's quite a lot to unpack there. But how did you see it? I mean, was it a foul? Do you think Serkin should have done better? Should Patterson have done better? What's Bailey Wright? I mean, lots going on there, wasn't there?
Well, for a start, to say that you've replayed it a couple of times would be an understatement. We must have seen it about 40 times already. But
it was like last week, mate. I've just got to make you pay.
But I mean, the whole thing just stank. To be honest, the problem was because I remember thinking that the fourth official put the board up 2 minutes, and as soon as he did that, it was like we just fell asleep. It's like we just stopped. It's like job done. Let's get in, for the break.
It goes back to this mentality thing, doesn't it, that we were talking about last week? Like we are switching off. It's not just this isn't the first time we're switching off too much, and it's like it's a game by game habit now. We're now conceding every game, switching off in key moments where we weren't doing that at the start of the season.
Yeah, and because I noticed straight away, because as soon as he put the board up, because I was thinking, right, I'll be happy because of the way most of the first half went, that it was kind of touch and go and all this sort of stuff. We got back into it. And I thought if we get in goalless, I thought, brilliant, we'll get in, we'll regroup, brilliant. And then the board went up. And after that, it was weird. We just started kind of walking around. I mean, because even if you go back, the original ball in from the left, I mean, they had acres of time to put that ball in. And I think it was 2-on-1 down that flank when they put that ball in. But we just gave them too much space. We stood off them. And that ball, when it comes in, when it actually comes in, it goes past everybody. And it was like kind of half-hearted a bit. Nobody took control and just got rid of it. And then after that, again, Dennis Serkin, we kind of called him out last week for kind of not closing him down. And I mean, his reaction after the goal, actually, he looked absolutely shattered, to be honest. At that point, he looked like he was knackered. I think that was part of the reason the winger got to the byline and got half a yard to get the ball in. But the whole Carlton Morris thing and Danny Bart, I mean, 100%. I don't think anyone could argue that Carlton Morris didn't go over and kind of nobble Danny Bart and do something and knock him over. But he knew what he was doing and he got away with it. I mean, look, we got. It should have been a decision, but the problem is the ball was miles away, and you're never going to get those unless the linesman is really on the ball. You're not going to get those decisions, and it looked like it actually hurt Danny Bart because he was physically knocked to the floor. He didn't just he didn't throw himself down or anything like that, so it actually hurt him. But if that was our striker, we'd be thinking it was absolutely it was fantastic and kind of brilliant, and would be all over it. So, look, yeah, we can complain. Referees missed one, but you've got to hand it to Carlton Morris. He kind of did his job. He kind of took the defender out, and then he had half a yard when the ball came in to finish it off. But even after that, we could have done something about it. Yes, Bailey Wright was then split between two players, but Bailey Wright could have done something about it. Patterson could have been stronger. If you look, again, going back to the ball in, not just Serkin, but if you look, there's Serkin and Pritchard. And instead of, when he goes down the line, Pritchard could kind of go in that direction as well and cut the ball out. But he goes in the other direction. Instead of doubling up, he could help him out a bit more. So to be like I said right up front, the whole everything about that goal absolutely stank from what we did, from what the officials did. And fair play again. It's how Luton play. I was going to say Coventry there for some reason. It just I linked this.
Was it because we were playing in blue and white?
Maybe. But yeah, it these sort of things kind of happen. What Carlton Morris did, but we didn't help ourselves.
It's interesting though, because I'm presuming you've heard the Alex Pritchard podcast, but in that, the one that he did with the club, he talked a little bit about VAR coming in the Championship, and he's totally in favour of it. He thinks that we've been docked so many points this season just by bad decisions. That's one where VAR would have ruled the goal out, because they would have zoomed in on Danny Bart, saw him watching the ball. It's not like Bart bought it. He's not even aware of Morris being there. He gets kneed in the back of the leg. VAR, that rules it out. Same last week with Burnley. It wouldn't have happened. There would have been a goal ruled out. And we've had it so many times this season. We've probably been on the other end of it too, though. Sorry, it wasn't Burnley. It was the 2 goals down at I can't even remember who we played now. We lost. This just the games have been coming that often. I can't remember who we played, but yeah, lost 2-0 the other week where both goals shouldn't have stood. Blackburn. There we go.
Yes.
Remember now.
Yeah.
Blackburn. Tell I do me research. So yeah, down at Blackburn we had 2 goals, and I think that's where the topic sort of came from. He was like, he was talking about me saying, well, in the Scottish Premiership they've got VAR, so why have we not got it? And these sort of decisions do strengthen those calls. Sunderland are a big team. We've got a lot of sway in the Championship. You would imagine at these big AFL meetings it'll come up. It could be on the horizon, but it is another one of those things where you look at it and you go, if we had VAR, that wouldn't have stood,
but
and it would have changed the game.
Isn't there rules? I mean, what might be getting into it, but isn't there rules where, to have VAR, like all the clubs have got to have a certain amount of infrastructure, like they've got to have a big scoreboard or something that can show the decisions and all this sort of stuff. Because
when you look at some of the Scottish teams, Chris, they're not even League Two grounds, are they?
Well, that's true, but I was just thinking, because actually Luton might be a prime example why there isn't VAR in the Championship, because the likes of them won't have that sort of stuff,
Wouldn't you think though that in order to push it through, that there would be a commitment of funds to install certain things in grounds? You would thought, wouldn't you? I can't imagine the likes of Ross County and the SPL have the money to pay for all of that. I don't know how it works, but I mean that's the only thing I can think really, is that when you look at the size of some of the clubs in the Scottish Premiership, they're smaller than some of the teams in League Two, and the grounds are smaller, and I don't know. There must be a reason why it's not happened yet. I just can't understand what it is.
Well, looking at Luton's ground, I think they've got bigger priorities than a big scoreboard, to be honest with you.
They'll be in the Prem next season and they'll need it anyways. Yeah, so we went into half-time 1 down. Everybody was raging. Some of the crack online and sort of in our group chats, people had totally lost their minds, but we had another 45 minutes of football to play. I mean, at that point, to be fair, I was gutted because I actually thought we deserved to at least be level going into the break. I thought that in the first half, we had some decent chances. Like I say, we hit the post. Ahmad opened up a number of times. And like I say, the foul and the build-up to it makes us think we were probably undeserved to be 1 down. But we had to respond in the second half, and that's what it was interesting, because on the flip side of the Burnley game, where we went in far too comfortable, come out far too comfortable, and got made to pay for it. He put the same team out there. There was no subs at half time. We put the same team out there. He'd obviously told them, they'd have been talking in the dressing room about the foul and the build up to their goal. The lads will have been pissed off. That'll have done the team talk for Mowbray. He said, look, you've been robbed, but there's nothing we can do about it now. Just go and show them what you're all about. Second half, I thought we were great. I thought we were good. And I wouldn't say it was the best football we've played, but I just thought we were all right. We knocked it about well, like we do. We tried to get in behind. Thought Roberts was pretty effective, probably more effective than Diaku was. And as the sort of half went on, a couple of other players came on. I know that a lot of people were impressed with Mishu coming on. I know that when Ellis Sims came on, he offered quite a lot up front. So the dynamic of the game was slightly different, because in sort of the past, what's it been since Sims got injured, we just haven't had that striker to bring on. But on the other side as well, our bench just seemed to be better, and we had better options to bring off. And I think Mowbray talked about that after the game. He actually said he was pretty blunt. He said no offense to the lads who didn't make the squad today, but that's probably as strong as our bench has looked in a long time. And he actually gave credit to the likes of Roberts, Embleton and Sims coming on, and Mishu, for changing the game, where maybe in the last few weeks, we talked about this last week, didn't we? We haven't seen a lot from the lads coming off the bench in the last few weeks. So overall, we started the half pretty well as it went on. Oh, you're shaking your head and you're saying no, you don't agree? You don't think we didn't start too good?
No, I'm going to disagree.
I thought
with
we were all right.
I think the first 15 minutes. I mean, don't get us wrong. We weren't. I'm not saying we were awful or we were worse than we were in the. Well, I just think first 15 minutes of the second half, I think both teams were just kind of slogging away at each other. There wasn't really any chances. There wasn't anybody putting their foot on the ball. There wasn't any kind of period of possession. There wasn't any, let's take control of the game. It was just tackles and high balls, and the ball was in the air far too much. But and this is where I have a bit of an issue again. You know, we talked about this last time, that the way the first half went, it was a kind of a slogging match. You know, both teams just going at it, basketball at times, long balls, nobody trying to put a foot on the ball and controlling it. And it felt like we needed to make that change. And we talked about Mowbray making the substitutions to change a game. I mean, yes, and in the end, he did on 60 minutes, you know, on the hour mark, he made those changes. But, you know, part of me didn't understand why at half time, and don't get us wrong, I wasn't surprised, because Mowbray hasn't been one to say something's not working, I need to change it now. He seems to wait until, right, I have to change it now. But maybe at half time, we could have said, right, well, this is what we need. We need someone to put a foot on the ball, right? Michu's going to be that person, right? Let's make that change and try and make that happen. We came out, and for me, the first 15 minutes of the second half was exactly the same, but actually of a lower quality, really. It just, like I said, both teams were just slogging away at each other. We made those changes on the hour mark, so Pritchard, Diaku and Neil came off, Michu, Roberts and Embleton came on, and almost kind of immediately, it just, the game's changed. And he obviously, I mean, fair, you know, credit where credit's due for Mowbray. He clearly gave those players an instruction to say, keep the football, you know, let's control the game.
Yeah.
We're better than this. We can play better football than this. And he gave that instruction. And from pretty much from the first minute after making those subs, we started to put a foot on the ball. And I actually made a note that kind of just after the subs, it was the first period of passing where we just kind of, you know, we played it into midfield and we made Luton run a bit, which we hadn't made them do. Like we hadn't made them chase us when we just kept the ball, and we did it straight away. And the chances kind of started coming. I mean, Ahmad kind of had that shot into the side net and kind of about 5 minutes after we made the subs. And then we kind of backed, you know, we changed the game for about 10 minutes after those initial subs. And then after 10 minutes of that, that's when he brought Ellis Sims on, which I think was actually a really good move to change the game first and then bring Sims on.
I was a little bit confused at half, just in the start of the second half, I'm honest, why Sims wasn't brought on. I was just looking at it and thinking, well, we're 1-0 down, you know, should we not just give him 45 minutes? I don't know how it was thought out. On this occasion, the subs worked. Obviously, they worked because, like you say, they all had an impact, but it just felt like Sims came on a bit late for me because of that reason. One of the things you said there, good point you made, about the ball going forward quite a lot, going over the top and long. You know, if he's on the pitch, that's ideal to meet and drink to him. When he came on, I thought he held the ball up brilliant. That, like, straight away, that was the thing I noticed the most. I'm not even saying Sims came on and was like, you know, prime Didier Drogba or anything, but he came on and the lads were like, right, we've got someone to hit now, and they were popping the ball off him and just getting it back little five, and that makes such a difference to everybody. We've got like a squad full of players who are brilliant at that 2-touch, 5-yard passing, working the ball out of tight situations, round players who are pressing and stuff. We were brilliant at that, but we just lack that physical presence up against the centre halves to stop it going straight back. And I think that's where Sims made his biggest impact in the game. But like I said at the start of this little section, you know, Mowbray talked about the quality he had on the bench on this occasion, and you know, Roberts, Embleton, Michu, and Sims is a lot better than what we've had in the last few weeks. And that's the thing, isn't it? Is obviously when we'll probably talk about Huddersfield in a bit, but like, he's going to make changes to the team, I would imagine. There's going to be players who came on who will start that game, and that's when he's got to find that balance again on the bench. And we were talking about this last week about how players have just become accustomed to coming on as subs, and it's lessened their impact on games because they're just coming on. They're not really like, they're coming on with a point to prove or anything. They're just, all right, I'm on now. Where like the likes of mainly Embleton and Patrick Roberts in this case are players who we know who can do a job from the bench, and that's maybe where it's a bit different. So the balance has got to be struck again down the line. But yeah, subs were fantastic. You know, Corey Evans and Pritchard didn't finish the game again, which will shock nobody, because how many times has that happened? It happens nearly every game. You know, I would love to get them off the record and ask about that, because as two of the more experienced players, it can't sit right with them that they keep getting taken off after an hour or so.
Yeah. But just on your point, because actually you hit on something there when you were talking about, changing the personnel who actually you've got on the bench, and the comments you said Mowbray made about that. You wonder if the decisions to the likes of starting Diaku, those sort of decisions, you wonder if it's actually thinking, well, in previous games, I haven't been able to impact games much. This is Mowbray thinking that, he hasn't been able to impact games much because he's got the same players on the bench. And like you said, those changes are just doing the same thing week after week. If he starts with the likes of Diaku, or, if he starts with the likes of, in this game, we had Ahmad or whatever, and then he brings the likes of Robertson or Sims. I mean, we're not saying like we'll do that every week, but the likes of Bennett might have missed out at the weekend because, like you said, he's thinking, well, actually, I want him to start. I'm going to rotate everything, and I want him to start in midweek. So
yeah, that's what we were talking about just off air, weren't we? About something Mowbray said after the game. He was talking about the yellow card Jack Clark got for something really stupid, which obviously is now ruled him out of the game on Wednesday. And his response to that to the press was that it might be Bennett's chance to start a game and show what he's got with that pace and stuff. So he sort of hinted that might be the case. It's funny, isn't it? Because it's like what I said at the start, like Diaku, there's been nowhere near, and all of a sudden he's starting a game. Bennett hasn't made the squad on this occasion, could start on Wednesday. I suppose that's why you've got a squad, though, isn't it? Not everybody can be in the 18.
Yeah, but Mowbray might have just felt, well, something needs freshening up, because I made comments before the game, I think in the preview, that what we didn't want to do was get into that habit. We'd lost 3 out of 4, and any more might have made it a habit. And Mowbray might have just thought, well, if I freshen it up, and actually the other thing was, so many games recently, actually the game we've needed to impact a game, on the hour mark, 75 minutes, whatever it is, by making changes that we could have won the game, we could have got a point, and we didn't. And actually, with bringing the likes of Robertson and Sims, I mean, when Sims came on, Sims came on around the kind of 70-minute mark, about 10 minutes after those initial 3 came on, and after that, I mean, it was virtually all us. I mean, we started getting chances pretty much, a couple of minutes later. I think it was about 2 minutes after Sims came on. That was when Clark had that good chance 6 yards out, which smashed against a defender. Probably should have scored, but to be fair, it was a cracking block because he absolutely smashed it from about 6 yards out. And then we scored what 5 or 6 minutes after Sims came on.
Yeah, and it was another sub who got the goal at Embleton. It was a great ball in from Jack Clark, to be fair. Like, that's what we're going to miss on Wednesday night at Huddersfield. Huddersfield, who are a poor team, and like I say, we'll get onto that in a bit, but he would have a field day on Wednesday against their defenders. And yet again, he showed why we put our faith in him in the summer, paid a bit of money, because Jack Clark is not a complete winger by any stretch. But what he's brilliant at is just running at people. Like, they don't know what to do with him. He twists inside and out. He's very one-footed, but yet he's so hard to defend against, because they don't know which way he's actually going to... It's not necessarily which foot he crosses the ball with. It's which way he's going to run. So you don't know whether he's going to go down the outside or the inside, because he's just as good in both situations, which is quite unusual for a lot of wingers these days. A lot of them are... if they're like, I would say Patrick Roberts is a bit like this, to be honest. Patrick Roberts is all left foot. So when you play him on the right, you can guarantee he's going to cut inside and run across the sort of defensive line. Clark, you just don't know which way he's going. And the fullback doesn't know which way he's going. Takes him down the outside. Clark puts a great ball across. And I think you said this a few weeks ago on a show where you were talking about the fact that Embleton's so two-footed. That's what makes him a commodity in this squad. Left-footed finish, they don't get much better than that. And he's, I don't know which one's his stronger foot, but, if you were left-footed, you'd be pretty happy with that. Great finish, puts it into the bottom corner. Good run. I think after the game, he was asked about the goal, and he said that he's been talking to Mowbray, and Mowbray had said to him, I want you to make more of them runs sort of around the penalty spot when the lads get down the sides, because we need you there. Because he's a good finisher, Embleton, to be fair. You know, I'm not saying he scored loads of goals for us, but generally his finishing's quite decent. And yeah, an all-round decent goal, wasn't it?
It was brilliant. And it was funny because actually after, after Sims came on, it was just, you just saw a change in Jack Clarke, because actually before that, it looked like Jack Clarke was actually looking a bit frustrated, and he was kind of, you could see him huffing and puffing, and, we didn't give him the ball enough. He didn't get it in decent positions. Things he was trying weren't quite coming off. But then as soon as Sims came on and we made those changes, the ball was going out to him. And I mean, that's what Clarke does best. He just stood up to the defender. Defender just didn't have a clue which way he was going, because he shaped up when he first got the ball like to come inside. Like he was going to come inside, and then he just took a couple of touches, and before you know it, he had half a yard near the byline. And like Embleton said, I think he made those comments after the game, like, Mowbray had told him to get in the box. And I mean, that for a pullback, when someone gets to the byline, you saw Embleton's movement. He actually took the defenders in with him into the 6-yard box. And if you look, he completely stopped, took a step back. And that's why he had the space to be able to sweep it in. And, if Embleton can add that to his game, I mean, and he can get like that consistency we were talking a couple of weeks ago, I mean, we'll be laughing, that, because an informed Embleton is gonna get those sort of goals, and he's gonna pick those sort of things up. But yeah, I mean, Clarke, like I said, he was a frustrated figure before that, but he can just turn it on like that and create something out of nothing, and he will be a miss in midweek, unfortunately.
It was funny watching the goal back there, as we've been while you were talking, just because we were talking earlier about maybe how Cirkin could have done better, this player could have done that better on our goal. You watch their defender, he's fully aware of where Embleton is, yet still gets drawn away from him. Embleton doesn't move. Embleton positioning's pretty good. Yeah, he's just hanging around the penalty spot, really. But when you look at him,
he puts the brakes on. Do you say?
Yeah.
Everyone's running towards into the 6-yard
dropping
box,
deeper,
and
dropping the defensive line deeper. Yeah,
he just puts the brakes on.
Good play, good technical play. He's got the instinct in him to score those goals. Like I say, I love Embleton. I just want him to put a consistent run of performances together. If he can do that, you would be looking at maybe Pritchard's position in the team and going, well, he's actually offering a little bit more as a 10. He's scoring, he's creating. And then you would maybe be looking at around, that's what he should be focusing on. Embleton needs to look at the position on the pitch where he sees himself playing and think, I need to target that. I need to play there. Like, Alex Pritchard might be an experienced, established player, but he's in front of me at the minute. And that's the reason I'm not getting a consistent run of games anyways. I'm not playing the 10 position. I'm sometimes playing in where Dan Neil's playing. I'm sometimes playing out on the left wing or the right wing. Embleton needs to now decide, if I'm a 10, then I'm gunning for him. I love him. He's my teammate. I've got his back, but I'm gunning for him. Yeah. And to be fair, Pritchard isn't really producing when it comes to goals or assists. So that position's up for grabs as far as I'm concerned. But we've only got 3 games left till the break. Yeah. So as much as I want to say, Pritchard is going to come good too, Embleton's job is just to keep doing what he's just done there. And he might well start on Wednesday as a result.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I was going to make exactly the same point about Embleton. I don't think there's any debate about him being a cracking footballer. It's just what is Elliot Embleton? What is he? Is he like you just said? That question mark kind of hangs over him a little bit in terms of Mowbray's looking at him, and I'd be half tempted to play him as a central midfielder. Like maybe like that Dan Neil role. But then he has to kind of give Dan Neil an elbow and get into the team ahead of him. But if he adds that work rate to his game as to be a central midfielder, then he could slot in there. But like I said, I think his natural position at the moment is that Pritchard role. And he kind of it was a like for like substitution by Mowbray to replace Embleton, to put him on in place of Pritchard. So. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if in midweek he was in there. Wouldn't be surprised.
The problem is with the other thing with Pritchard, like we said, he's getting an hour a game, and really we want whoever's playing there to play every game, every minute of every game if they can. for whatever reason, they don't deem that he's able to finish a game. There's a reason they're doing it, because every single game Pritchard's off. Well, I mean, he's not. I would love to know the percentage of games he's finished since he came to Sunderland. Seems to be every game he comes off.
Yeah, but it's funny. I was just thinking there, and I'd be interested to go through the games. Actually, I might do it later and take a look, actually, because I get the impression, thinking back, that generally we're quite often chasing the game, and if Pritchard, if we need a goal and Pritchard hasn't been doing it, then he might get kind of hooked in someone else saying, "Go on, get us a goal," like Embleton did. But the other end of the stick is, if we've got a lead, then you might sacrifice Pritchard and bring on a more defensive player like Matete or Barr or someone like that. So the thing is, he's in that position where if it's not going right, he's going to be pulled off for someone who can attack and replace him. If it is going right, he might be brought off for a defensive player to keep the lead. So I don't know. I think it's just one of them, isn't it?
How do you think we played after the goal? Then how do you feel we did?
I thought we could have nicked it, because it's funny, because again, when I was kind of putting it all down on my thoughts after the game and writing some notes down about it, I actually think, because you were kind of longing for the goal, you thought, if we only get a point out of this, it'll be a fantastic point. And then we scored with 15 minutes left on the clock, and the way the kind of the next few minutes went after we scored, you thought, hang on a minute, we might be able to nick all 3 points here. And actually, I thought we looked the more dangerous side, even though, I mean, they had a couple of kind of scrambles in the box where it didn't fall to them and all that sort of stuff. Where but they didn't produce anything where you thought, oh, they've got a clear cut chance. And then we had with a few minutes to go, we had Patrick Roberts cutting inside, doing exactly what you talked about earlier. Cut inside, he had that shot, and I was up, arms in the air. I thought I was waiting for the net to ripple. I thought, get in, we've won this. And it went wide. I'm not sure how wide it went, because you never know from the camera angles. It could have went 10 feet wide, but as soon as he hit it, I thought it was in. And then in injury time, Ahmad did absolutely brilliant. Plucked one out of nowhere. I think he was on the left hand side, and he just smashed it. I don't know whether he meant it, actually, but I'm going to give him benefit of the doubt and say that he meant it. He kind of smashed the ball, kind of a daisy cutter, right into the middle of the pitch. And it landed at Ellis Sims' feet. And I just don't think Ellis Sims expected it to come, because if he'd taken a touch that took him forward in behind, he was kind of in on goal almost.
Yeah.
But it was, he was just kind of, like I said, I think it came through a couple of players before it got to Sims, and he wasn't expecting it. But, if it just landed, if he just kind of had that anticipation. But I mean, just while we're on that subject of Sims, you mentioned earlier on about him kind of coming on and when he came on. I think the timing of when he came on is, for me, it's a signal of where Sims is in his rehabilitation. I think it's really. Yeah. I think actually, if let's say Stuart was fit, and we had Stuart, and we had those options, my guess would be Sims might have been given a few more days to the Huddersfield game. I think it was kind of needs must, and that's why he was on the pitch, and that's why he had 20 minutes. And I think some of because it's so early, those things like that anticipation of that ball coming to him was he needs that half a yard where he needs that extra week's worth of training and on the training ground. But yeah, I thought actually, I'm not saying we should have, but I just think, with the odd couple of chances that we had, we could have easily nicked it. But what I will say is, I think a draw was probably a fair result in the end.
Yeah, I think that's what most people thought as well. We stuck a tweet out asking people for the 3-word reviews, and most of them are around about how we pretty much deserved a point. Patrick Hollis, our Paddy, says well-earned point. George Anderson, love this squad. Isola Sean says nice away point. JC says need more Sims. Steve Leach says, welcome back, Ellis. SR7 says, Embo over Neil. That's an interesting one. I was thinking about this when we were talking about Emilton just before, about how he's got to decide what his position is, because he's either wanting Pritchard's or he's wanting Dan Neil's, and quite a few people, like you just said, think he can play centre mid. Chris Scar, decent away point. Paul Cook, a good point. Harold says, respect the point. We've got lots of these. Wayne Chapman thinks Michu to start, which, again, we'll get into this when we talk about Huddersfield in a minute. Christine Smith, rest Pritchard, Neil. Joanne McKeown sounded fair enough. Paul Lund, better second half. Bambi, not too bad. Aslan says, frustrating, unlucky and hopeful. And we'll end on, from AJJ, a very bitty game. You're waving.
Just on that, because I don't think that when we were talking about the game, we mentioned Michu enough, because that comment about Michu there, that when I was talking about those initial subs on the hour mark when Michu came on, he was absolutely brilliant, but in a very simple way. That he didn't do anything complicated, and I do think he'd had instruction from Mowbray to do exactly what he did, but I think it played to his strengths, because I think that's what type of player he is. But he just put a foot on the ball and he didn't do anything too complicated. He didn't try a worldy diagonal for 40 yards. He not only just kept possession, but whenever people, as a central midfielder, whenever anybody was in possession, whether it was a defender or whether it was a wide player, he made himself available just for an easy short ball. And he provided space to people by being available for the ball. And every time he received it, his first touch was always bang on, and he always gave it simple. And at that point, it was exactly what we need. And if he starts kind of integrating himself into the team with these kind of cameos at the minute, I honestly think it's just a matter of time, because he looks like he's got a touch of class on the ball, and I just think it's a matter of time before he starts a game.
Yeah, they've brought him here for a reason, and Mowbray talked about it last week, where he's talking about how he referred to them more generally as a group, but Michu, Barr, Bennett, those players, about how there's so much change has gone on in their life since they came to Sunderland. It's almost impossible to expect them to be able to make a massive impact immediately, because like they're young kids, they've got so much to process, learning life skills away from the pitch, like with so much going on and having to adjust to moving to a new country and a new language and being away from family and friends and all the rest of it. Like, it's difficult for them to be able to show on the pitch what they can do. Like, if we'd signed, say, Michu and started him in games, I guarantee he would have been poor over the majority of them, because it's just not how it works. But we're now sort of 2 months down the line since he came. We've got a couple of games before the break, and it may well be that, not necessarily, he might start 1 or 2, I don't know, but I would think maybe after the break is when Mowbray will be looking at that particular group of players and going, right, you've had your couple of months to settle in, we've been away on winter warm training, and we've got to know each other better, because that's a big thing he talked about. He wants them to go away and he wants them to just get to know people better, because he feels like you don't get that unless you're with each other 24 hours a day. So they've got that to come. They've got a couple of weeks of training, and that might be then when they go, right, our plan for you is now ramping up. We want you starting games. We want you showing what you can do, why you came to this club. And he's probably, out of all of them, the one where I'm looking at him thinking the pedigree he's got's massive. There's a reason Paris Saint-Germain was playing him in games in a team of superstars last season, and he was getting minutes for that team. He should be able to affect games in the Championship, but only if the situation's right. You know what I mean? It's not, we can't expect the world from this kid, but eventually he will get the chance to show what he's got.
You say that about the Championship, and you're right, eventually, but I think the Championship is it's gonna take them a while to get used to the football in the Championship, because
it's very easy to balls that up as well, isn't it?
Well,
that's the other thing.
The Championship doesn't take any prisoners. I mean, it's in some ways it might even be more physical than the Premier League, because the Premier League, you've got more time and space on the ball to maybe do your thing, and it's more kind of, it's more intricate in the Premier League, whereas, in the Championship, someone will just come in and smash you if you take too long on the ball, and they need time to get used to that.
Yeah. That leads us into the next game then. So we play Wednesday against Huddersfield at their stadium, which I can't remember the name of. It used to be the John Smith Stadium. I don't know if it still is. Might be.
Used to be the McAlpine back in the day as well.
Yeah, it's still the John Smith Stadium. So there we go. Probably one of the best names in football, that. But yeah, Huddersfield aren't doing great. Second bottom of the league. Although their form has been better recently. They've picked up a little bit, but they struggled a little bit like us, to be fair. They've won one, they've lost one, they've drawn, like, you know what I mean? No real pattern to their form, but they're fighting to try and get some momentum. I think they've got a new manager now, so maybe he's just settling in. But as we've talked about there are a few lads who probably should be pushing for starting that game, aren't there? Is it time to start Sims, do you think, or is it too early? Because it's one of those, isn't it, where Huddersfield are a team built last season under Corberan, who last season anyways, when they were quite successful, like to keep it on the deck. Could be the time to put a big lad up front and see what we can do. The other one is Patrick Roberts, who got a decent chunk of time on the pitch, providing he's got through that unscathed. Could be one for him to start. As we said before, Mowbray has given press interviews after the match and said about how Clark's ban presents opportunity to maybe Bennett to start a game. That's pretty exciting because we haven't seen that yet. Quite a lot that can happen here, isn't there?
Yeah, and the evidence suggests, you know, what I said earlier on about Sims, the evidence suggests that I really can't see Sims being in the starting 11. I'd be amazed because, like I said, I think if he was fully fit, he would have come on earlier. And my gut feelings telling us that Sims wouldn't have been on the bench if we weren't kind of
desperate.
It's such need from. But I mean, talking about other changes. The Diaku thing is completely thrown us. It's just kind of before, if maybe a couple of weeks ago, I would have been saying, I would kind of know what Mowbray's first 11 is. Now, after that kind of curveball that he threw in, I'm kind of thinking, well, anybody could start really. Roberts could come back in. Michu could start. He might stick with Neil. He might stick. I assume that Evans will be in there because away from home midweek. I just think I'd be amazed if two kind of ball players were in there. But you wonder if Mateta was on the bench and he didn't come on. You wonder if he might get on and kind of give a bit of energy in the middle. But it's actually who knows now. Actually, after Diak came in, I haven't got a clue. But what I do think, I think at the back, I think he'll keep with that back four. I think we stood up to what Luton threw at us, and I think we'll stick with that back four with Bailey Wright in alongside Danny Bart and O'Nien at right back. Just on the subject of Huddersfield, even though looking at their position in the table, second bottom, 1 point above West Brom, who are bottom, 2 points away from Middlesbrough, even though they've got a game in hand to get out the bottom three. Looking at their home form, they've won 3 out of the last 4 at home, where they've won 3, lost 1 in their last 4 at home. If you look at their home record this season, they've got kind of one of their best defensive records. I think there's only 4 teams or something who've conceded less at home this season than Huddersfield, so they don't concede goals at home. They don't score many either, but they've won 4 this season, and all 4 of their victories this season have come at home. So I don't, look, if you just based it on the league position, you'd think, we've got a chance of 3 points, and I think that's what we should be targeting, obviously, but I don't think it's going to be as easy as the league table suggests.
Nah, the only changes I would make are the ones that are obvious, if I'm honest. I think I hadn't really considered playing Bennett until Mowbray. I read Mowbray's comments on him, but it does make sense, to be honest, because he's probably, out of the rest of the players, he's the most like Clark. He plays on the left, so give the lad a chance, play him, give him a shot.
The other advantage of playing Bennett is he's a bit of an unknown quantity, isn't he? I mean, there's not much to go off. So if he's in the starting 11, you're going to have kind of players going, well, what's he like? Does he cut inside? Does he go down the wing? Opposition aren't going to know much about him. Yeah,
so I think he comes in and Roberts comes in for Diaku, and that's probably it. If Sims is deemed fit enough to start, then you could maybe bring out Pritchard even. Is that likely? against his old team away from home. The other thing is, that's the other thing I hadn't even thought about until I've just said his old team. He's going to really want to prove a point against them because they hate him. And that's maybe a good time to play him.
You would have Ahmad up top.
Yeah, it's tough though, isn't it? Because you can't drop Ahmad. Scored against Burnley, then puts in a man of the match performance the other day. He can't be dropped, but it's quite clear he's better through the middle. Pritchard is a difficult one because I might have been calling to make a change there, but this is his old team. They really don't like him. And I actually think when he's got a bit of pressure on his shoulders, he thrives and he does look good. And I think this could be one where Pritchard actually has a good game. So tough, isn't it? I think you might be right about Sims. You might just keep him on the bench again.
Yeah. I'd be amazed if Sims started. But the Embleton one, Mowbray's got to be tempted to stick with a player whose tail's going to be up after scoring the goal at the weekend, isn't it?
It's an interesting one, isn't it? I think Pritchard's going to be desperate to play this game. It's just one. I don't know what Mowbray is a bit of a. He likes to try and motivate his players with an arm around the shoulder type of, and I think he'll know how much it'll mean to Pritchard to play this game. So I think he starts. It's a strange one, this, isn't it? I'm struggling to work out what he's going to do.
Yeah, like I said a couple of weeks ago, I think we would have just went, yep, that's going to be the 11. He's not going to make changes, and now it's a case of who knows.
Yeah. So I think whatever he does, he's got a couple of tough decisions to make. There's going to be players left off, even though Clark's not available, and we don't know of any injury issues. But there are going to be some disappointed players not in the squad because we didn't see Abdullah Bar. He's another one who probably wants to be playing and isn't.
It's good though. It's a good problem to have, and the fact that we're going around the squad saying, you're saying it's exciting that Bennett might get a start. The way we were talking about Michu, I mean, if he comes in, would anybody kind of be, completely surprised if he came in? Would anybody really be surprised if Embleton came in for Pritchard? Would anybody be surprised, maybe more so if Matete came in to give that energy in the middle? But just going through the players, we have got some options to kind of bring in if he wants to change things up.
Yeah. How do you say going in this game? Because it's tough, isn't it? Huddersfield are second bottom, but like I say, their form's been better, hasn't it? And we are just at that stage now where we've got to start winning games soon. And I think even though we know there's a bit more to it than the fact Huddersfield is second bottom, I think if you're being honest, we've got to win this game.
Yeah.
I think we've got to win this game.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely, 100%. We've got to win the game, and we've got a decent, not fantastic. We've got a decent kind of based on our away record. It would kind of put us in the top 10 in the table just based on away games this season. But again, I mean, I keep coming back to it, but I just think we got drawn into playing the way Luton. We got drawn into play the way they play. If we from the off at Huddersfield get the ball down and play football like we can do and keep possession of the football, I genuinely think we can beat anybody in this division. It's just how we, how we approach games, and if we start off well, and if we kind of get players in the right positions with the ball, and we can take advantage of. So I think after 5 minutes, it's one of them actually with the type of team at the moment that after 5 minutes you can tell which kind of Sunderland kind of are playing, and whether we have to get back to what we do well, or whether we have to kind of ride it out and earn the right to play in a game like we did at Luton. But 3 points, I think it's there for the taking. Looking at their league position, but they're a better side at home than the league table suggests.
Yeah, and it's funny looking at their the stats from the game against Millwall at the weekend. They only had 41% possession. Scored in the 9th minute. Millwall had nothing. Millwall had one shot on target in the whole game. So do they frustrate teams? I mean, I don't know enough about Huddersfield, but you've got to, looking at that, what I do think, looking at that, the fact that they gave away so much of the ball and Millwall did nothing with it, suggests we're going to have quite a lot of the ball. And I actually think we're quite good at breaking teams down. So but that's with Clark in the team, and we don't have Clark. So there are so many variables. I'll be honest, I would be disappointed if we didn't win, but we always say that, well, I always say anyways, that a point away from home is always decent.
Yeah.
I don't know if fans will view it that way, though.
Well, I mean, that result kind of sums the Championship up, because Millwall had won kind of 4 off the bounce before the weekend, and then they go to Huddersfield, who were almost bottom of the league, and get turned over. So it's that type of league, you know. If we're not on it, even though going to a team who are kind of struggling in general, if we're not on it, we'll get turned over. If we're on our game, we'll get 3 points. I think it's as simple as that. Because we are good enough. We've got the players to impact games like that and get the goals and win games if like I said, if we're on it.
Fingers crossed, mate. Fingers crossed. Well, we'll be back in the build up to the weekend, possibly with a preview show, possibly with something a bit like this where we just chat about the game midweek. I don't know. These midweekers are throwing everything up in the air, but we will be back at some point with a podcast, so make sure you catch that. All your content over on rokereport.sbnation.com too, every single morning, 6 a.m. Watch out for that. We've got Lasses podcast now, which Rich hosts. Find that feed on your favourite podcatcher. We've got Friday Night Live coming up on Friday night at 7:30 over on Twitter. So make sure you join us for that. And if you're not sick of hearing us, reading our views, by that point, then God knows what. But yeah, we'll be back at various points throughout the week. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for joining us, mate.
Always a pleasure, mate.
And thanks to listeners. Catch you later.